starting with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs kicked it off in the first round. They were the team that the Eagles traded up with at 31. So they moved back one spot, still got Ohio State offensive tackle Josh Simmons. They came back in the second with Tennessee defensive tackle Omarr Norman-Lott. They had to pick a few picks later, early in the third. Ashton Gelati, the edge rusher out of Louisville. Noel Williams, the quarterback out of Cal, was their second third-round pick. Jalen Royals, one of our favorite fourth-rounders, wide receiver out of Utah State. Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker out of Oregon. And then Brashard Smith, the running back out of SMU. Really enjoyed this draft, Sam. I thought they hit on a whole bunch of good players and added players in key spots on that roster.
Yeah, this honestly might be my favorite draft in the entire NFL. I liked every single one of their picks, and several of the picks I really liked and thought were amongst the best picks of that round or of that entire draft. Several of them represent, I think, really outstanding value as well. According to Arif Hassan's value work relative to the consensus board, it was like a top 10 valuable draft. I think a big part of that would have been Jalen Royals, given the kind of slide that he went on. But, I mean, this is an absolutely phenomenal draft, in my opinion.
So the first pick here, Josh Simmons, he had the patella injury, was on pace to maybe be the top tackle. I think I saw a quote floating around from Chiefs executive saying, look, he would have been the top left tackle prospect. He would have been the guy if he wasn't hurt. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think when you watch his film, moves well. He had an outstanding, 6 or 7 games for Ohio State before getting hurt, and Donovan Jackson moved over to take his place. I will say from a production standpoint, though, subpar at San Diego State from a grading perspective was pretty good in 2023 from Ohio State. Not completely like edge rushers. I'd rather see a more consistent body of work from a production standpoint to go with what the film shows. So that'd be my only concern on Simmons. I think the film was good and showing the upward trajectory for him, but you do have the injury risk, and you do have, hey, he's only really done it at a high level, I would say, for, that half a season. But then you have, from a team building perspective, this, it seems like annual question with Kansas City. What are you going to do at left tackle since Eric Fisher retired? And this could be the long-term play for Kansas City after really stitching it together over the last couple of years and kind of doing a halfway, bringing in Jalen Moore on a 2-year deal to kind of be the bridge. I think it sets up pretty well for Kansas City in the future here at left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, both tackle spots are something of a question mark for Kansas City. You've got left tackle with Jalen Moore being given this sort of hedge of a contract, and maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't. He's the short-term answer, but we don't know if he's the long-term answer yet. And then even if he is, on the right side of the line, you've got Juwan Taylor, who was handed that $20 million a year deal a couple of years ago and hasn't really lived up to it. So either tackle spot, I think, is available for Josh Simmons to position himself to eventually take over. But neither one of them needs a day one starter. So they have the luxury of being able to take a guy like Josh Simmons, who's coming off that patella knee injury. They can ease him in. They don't have to play him right away. They can work him back to full strength before they figure out where he belongs. And while that's happening, they can work out, is Jalen Moore actually going to be the answer at left tackle? Do they need a left tackle now, or do they look to Simmons as more of a right tackle long-term replacement? Either way, I think it's a great landing spot for him personally to be able to have that luxury to come back over a period of time. And I think it's a great landing spot for Kansas City because, they get to grab a tackle who I think probably would have been significantly higher in the first round, but for that injury. So it's a great selection from either side.
It's a really good point. It helps both sides potentially, and yeah, maybe Moore is the long-term answer at left tackle. Still young in his career, and it's interesting because both players have, I would say, a small sample size of good play at left tackle. One at the NFL level, one at the college level.
Right.
But then both guys could be the tackle answer for Kansas City. So I thought they filled a glaring need there, and that's one of those let the draft fall to you type of deals. I mean, I think a lot of people expected Simmons to go higher, and that works out pretty well for Kansas City. I liked their next 3 defensive picks as well. Omarr Norman-Lott, I think, just an interior disruptor at defensive tackle. I think the defensive line depth was definitely a big need for Kansas City. Travell Wharton out this offseason, replacing him with an Omarr Norman-Lott I know PFF's board had him as a top 32 type of player. I think the second round was great value for him, for a player who hasn't really played a ton. But if you look at his pass rush win rate, his disruption in the run game, everything's well above average compared historically to good NFL players. So I think Norman-Lott, even though he's 23 years old, has upside, because he hasn't played a ton for a guy that age, but every time he's out there, he's really disruptive. But I think the combination of him, Ashton Gelati was a guy. I sent you the preseason draft board from last year, for whatever that's worth. Last year at this time, people thought he might have been a top 32 player in this draft. He dropped a little bit, but it's a deep edge rush class. I think Gelati's a second-round pick in most years as far as edge rushers go. He's really disruptive out of Louisville, and then Noel Williams led the FBS in interceptions, and we had him as our fringe, top 10 or 11 cornerback in this class. So I think it's a really nice defensive haul with those next 3 picks.
Yeah, they needed to restock some defensive line rotation with Tershawn Wharton in particular moving on. But those 2 picks, I think, give them some real juice up front. Omarr Norman-Lott will be the Tershawn Wharton replacement in terms of a sort of interior pass rushing presence. Ashton Gelati is one of the best power edges in this entire draft. I think if not the best, a guy that has strength, has power, can set an edge, can make some moves as a pass rusher. Noel Williams as the Cal corner, great ball skills, great size, return ability as well. So, a 3rd-round guy that can also function as a kick returner for this team, as a kick return touchdown on his resume, not just a guy that's got experience doing it. And then in the 4th round, Jalen Royals, one of my favorite wide receivers in this draft, coming out of a sort of quirky offense at Utah State where it makes projection a little bit tricky. But I loved his tape. I love his ability after the catch. I love it before the catch. Jumped out immediately watching Senior Bowl practice reps. That guy just gets it. He moves the right way. He may not separate to an insane degree, but he gains position and keeps it. And that's NFL separation, right? You don't need to get 5 yards wide open. You just need to gain position on the DB and then maintain that position and be able to make the play through the catch. And he's exceptionally good at that. So in the 4th round for him, I think that's insane value. And then even all the way down to the 7th round, Brashad Smith, the running back, that guy's got real juice. I mean, he was a former receiver, sort of young to the position, but I think can be an every down back.
Hey guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now. Yeah, I really like pretty much every pick, or I get every pick for the Chiefs. That's how I would say it. It's not that I think I don't think every player is going to be a hit or anything like that necessarily. I think there's a path for each of those players. So Brashad Smith, you mentioned, wide receiver conversion, really fast. I think in my notes, it's like, hey, he's still learning the position. He's bouncing it outside, maybe too much. I don't think, but as a 7th rounder, yeah, okay, he's not probably an every down guy for Kansas City right now. But the way they use all of their misdirection, all of their jet sweep game, and then just generally putting him in the backfield, I think they have a mismatch type of weapon with Brashad Smith. And then you mentioned what you mentioned about Royals, his movement skills, reminded me a little bit of Amari Cooper. And then saw some other people saying, hey, the best comp for him was Rashee Rice, who is already there in Kansas City. Right. So you've got some insurance there. I think you have just another potentially dependable receiver added to this receiving core here. And then Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker from Oregon, really athletic, moves extremely well. I think he's got good range and coverage. Got do a little bit better in the run game. But if you're talking about having a specific role as a coverage type of linebacker, I think Bassa has potential to do that as well. So Noel Williams is the other interesting one here, Sam. They play a ton of press man, and I think they're kind of loaded at the cornerback position. They brought in Christian Fulton. They have Jalen Watson, Nazeeh Johnson, Joshua Williams. Noel Williams just gets added to the mix here, and even if he doesn't contribute for another 2 or 3 years, feels like the type of guy as a 3rd rounder 2 or 3 years from now, you're like, all right, now they have their replacement and another starter. So there's a lot of just good picks here, I think, for the Chiefs. And we're not saying that because it's the Chiefs. These are guys we all pretty much liked coming in.
Yeah, and you're right. Look, a lot of these guys probably won't work out just because that's the strike rate of the draft. But I like all of the players that they drafted. And I think you're right. Each one of them has an obvious sort of pathway or role within this team to both make the team and then contribute. Brashad Smith in the 7th round is a great example. Like, former wide receiver, has basically got 1 year of playing running back. He is going to be labeled as a 3-down back, or as a 3rd down back rather, because of that background, right? Former wide receiver, sort of scat back type. But I actually think he's got way more upside than that. He's got obviously elite receiver skills for a running back, snags the ball out of the air with his hands. But I actually think he's an effective runner inside as well. You can see he's a little bit slow reading it sometimes because of that lack of running back experience. But when he does, he's got great reactions that sort of read the eye foot combination, right? As soon as he reads it, his feet are able to do exactly what he wants them to do. He's not a big guy, but there's a play on there where he runs over a 235-pound linebacker at the goal line against Duke. Like, he could end up becoming a significant overall running back for this team, not just a guy that goes out there for the occasional 3rd down.
I want to answer a question from the chat too. Steve D in Italy asking us how we evaluate the drafts, if we're doing it based off of haul or expectations or whatever it might be. We're not necessarily putting hard and fast grades. We don't really have like a formula for this necessarily. But I think in our analysis, Sam, we try to be honest with that, where again, a lot of people are going to grade a draft and say, well, this team picked 4 times. It's a C. But we try to look at it relative to what they had and at least acknowledge how they only had 4 picks, why that is the case and everything. So anyway, the other note I wanted to add about the Chiefs is with Omarr, Norman-Lott, and Ashton Gillotte added to this defensive line group, I was raving about the Bills and their depth. Here's what Kansas City is now. George Karlaftis and Mike Dana, perhaps as starting edges with Charles Omenihu rotating in and out. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, add Gillotte to the mix there as well. At defensive tackle, you lose Travell Wharton. You still obviously have Chris Jones. Rotation of Mike Pennell, Jerry Tillery, add Omarr, Norman-Lott to that group. Getting closer to where they were before. I think that they replenished nicely with those 2 picks, and those guys, again, they're gonna have a chance to play 30 to 40 snaps, I think, this year and make an impact. So I think the Chiefs did a really nice job here.
Yeah, agreed. Like I said, it might be my single favorite draft in the NFL.
Renee, our friend Renee Bugner, number 4 Chiefs.
Apologies.
Number
Renee.
4 on the GPA, a 3.49. They had grades ranging from A to C- from East German Thor. C-. Everyone else seemed to like it. So
what
I
is
guess
I don't understand the translation between a GPA and a letter grade. What is a 2.32 GPA in terms of letters?
C+ probably. What's a 2? No, a 2 is a C, right? 3 is a B.
I don't know. I'm asking you.
3 2s. I don't know. Depends.
Well, that's Thor's average GPA is a 2.32, which sounds extremely harsh.
Oh yeah, his average is C+. That was my first instinct. Producer Will suggests C+. But that's good. I mean, that's somewhat normalized.
It actually sounds like that's what it's supposed to be. When if you're grading on a scale where, the top are A and the bottom are off like D's or whatever, that sounds like actually where it's supposed to be. And yet everyone else is way higher than that.
It is what it should be. But if you're also being honest, your evaluations aren't 100. That's under the assumption that your evaluations are 100% correct. And if that's the case, then half are getting better and half are getting worse and what have you. So anyway.
But then it's also like, I feel like most of the drafts were good this year. So I don't know that it necessarily should work that way, where half of them need to be below average, as opposed to the baseline is that most people get better.
All right. Anything else on the Chiefs? Most people liked them.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.